Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Peh Aleph. Our Mishnah mentioned that if I give something to an artisan to fix, let's say a shirt, I give it to the tailor to mend. While the tailor has it, he is considered a shomer sachar. Even though I'm not paying him to watch it, I am paying him to fix it. And he gets the benefit of holding on to the shirt so that it'll be easier for him to collect the fee. He doesn't have to go and run after the customer. He's like, okay, I'm not giving it back to the customer until they come and get it. So since he has a benefit of hanging on to the shirt, therefore he's considered a shomer sachar and therefore would be liable for geneva and aveda. The Mishnah further taught, V'chulan shamru, tolet shelcha v'ave ma'ot shomer chinam. Once the tailor sends a message to the customer and says, come get your item and bring money to pay for the fee. It's important that he says it in that order. Take your item and also bring money. He's not like holding it hostage. So he's saying, come, it's ready. Take your item. I don't want to watch it anymore. I'm not a watchman. So then he becomes a shomer chinam. Only while he's working on it, he needs it. So then he's a shomer sachar. But when he's done, he is downgraded to a shomer chinam and therefore would be patur for geneva va'aveda. Now we're going to compare this case of the tailor to a borrower. Tenan hatam. Amar lo shoel shelach ushlacha umeta chayav v'chen b'sha'a shema hazira. A Mishnah later on in this Masechet says that if someone wants to borrow someone else's donkey, so the borrower sends a message to the owner of the donkey and says, send your donkey. Okay, so he's authorizing that, yeah, I'm ready for it, send it over. And the owner does send it over and it dies on the way. There's always a problem. Something is damaged in transit. Who's it? Is it the sender or the receiver that's responsible? In this case, it's the borrower who is responsible because he authorized the sending. He said, send it. So that's it. He already becomes a borrower from the second it leaves the premises of the owner. And that's true also for the way back. Once the borrower is done with it and he's sending it back and it dies on the way or is injured on the way, so the borrower is responsible. He is the borrower until it gets back into the owner's property. That's the Mishnah. Now we have a limitation on this Mishnah. Amar Rafram bar Papa Amar Rav Chisda lo shanu ela shechizira betoch yemei she'ilata aval la'achar yemei she'ilata patur. Rav Chisda says, when is the borrower responsible for the way back? That's only when he returns it within the time period of the loan. Let's say that he said, can I borrow your donkey for 1 week? And after 5 days, he's already finished his work. And so he's sending it back within the week. So then the borrower is still a borrower and he's responsible until it's totally returned. However, if the week had passed and now he's done with it and it's past the loan period, so now on the 8th day he's returning it, he's not a borrower anymore. Now he's just like, okay, I'm giving it back to you, but I'm no longer a borrower because the time passed, and therefore if something happens to it on the way, he is not liable. All right, so now with this Mishnah and Gemara together, we're going to challenge our Mishnah over here. Mativ Rav Nachman bar Papa v'chulan shamru tolet shelcha v'haveh ma'ot shomer chinam. So Rav Nachman bar Papa challenges Rav Chisda's limitation here, because in our Mishnah says in all cases of artisans, once they say take your item and bring money to pay for it, then he is a shomer chinam. So we're going to make a diuk from here. It's only when he says, take your item, meaning I'm not willing to watch it anymore. Come and take it. That's it. It's your shirt. It's your responsibility. I'm putting it out. Okay, ha-gemartiv shomer sachar. But what if he didn't use language that's that strong? He said more moderate language. He said, I finished it. That's it. Then that would imply that he remains a shomer sachar, because he didn't say, come get your item. He's just letting him know that your item is done and he could get it, but he's not saying, I'm unwilling to watch it anymore. Okay, so now this is the comparison. Just like a renter who's past the time of the extension of the loan after a week, that's it. He finished with it. That is similar to the tailor who says, I finished with it, right? They both have finished their usage of the item. Now, the tailor, it says, we infer from our Mishnah that the tailor, when he says, I'm finished, he remains a shomer sachar. Unless he says, tolat shelcha, he remains a shomer sachar. Therefore, the same should be true of the borrower. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to, because they said 7 days, and now it's after 7 days, and he's returning it. He should remain a shomer sachar and be liable to the way back. So that is a challenge to Rav Chista's statement. And we answer, Lo ha have ma'ot v'tol shelcha shomer sachar. No, your diuk that you made from the Mishnah is not necessarily true. When the Mishnah says that the statement Tolat Shelcha V'aveh Ma'ot, then he becomes a Shomer Chinam, that's not to exclude Gemartiv, but rather it's to exclude if you switch the terms around. If he says, bring money and you can and then take your shirt. Well, that means he really doesn't want to give up the shirt. He's holding on to the shirt hostage until the person brings money. So then he remains a shomer sachar. See, he's still getting benefit from hanging on to the shirt because it will help him to collect the money more easily. Because he said money first, that means he is conditioning the return of the shirt on getting the money. So that's what is coming to exclude. Aval gemartiv mai shomer chinam. Okay, so you're telling me that only in the case of haveh ma'ot and tolad shelcha, then he remains a shomer sachar. But if he just said, I finished it, the moderate language, then you're telling me he would be a shomer chinam? Ihachi adetani v'chulan shamru tolad shelcha v'haveh ma'ot shomer chinam nishma'inan gemartiv v'kol sheken tolad shelcha. Well then, why the Mishnah in the first place say, oh, in all these cases, if the artisan said, take your item and bring money, he's a shomer chinam. Give us a bigger chidush. Because tola shelcha means I don't want to watch it anymore. So though for sure that's a shomer chinam, the Mishnah should have told us the bigger chidush. If he just says, I finished with it, then he's a shomer chinam, and I would have figured out by a kal vachomer. If that language is shomer chinam, then all the more so the stronger language of take your item. So why didn't the Mishnah say it? Just say, teach us the law of Gemartiv. And the answer is, Tolat shelcha is tirichaleh. Sakadatech amina shomer chinam nameh lahave kamashmalan. No, I need the Mishnah to tell me that in Tol et Shelcha, that he's even, has any responsibility. I need that, because I would have thought maybe he's not even a shomer chinam. Once the tailor says, take your item, I'm putting it outside on the tree branch. That's it, I'm done with it. It's your responsibility now to come and take it. I'm not a storage facility here. So I might have thought that he's not responsible at all. So the Mishnah has to give us that case that, yes, he's at least a shomer chinam. So Tol Behabe and Gemartiv are both shomer chinam, and therefore we resolve the challenge, because just like when the tailor says, I finished it, he's done, then he becomes a shomer chinam. He's not responsible for giving aveda. That's the same as Rav Chista's law, that when a borrower finishes the term of the agreement, then that's it, he's a shomer chinam, and when it gets hurt on the way back, genevav aveda, then he's not responsible. Okay, all this is one version of that discussion. We're going to have two more versions that basically say the same thing, just in a different order. Ika de amre, amar Rav Nachman bar Papa, af anan name tanena. In this version, we're assuming that we already know Rav Chista's ruling, that if it gets, if it dies on the way back, then he is responsible if it's during the agreed time period, but he's not responsible if the period of the loan has finished. So Rav Nachman Papa says, I have a proof. Before we brought this as a challenge, now we're going to try to bring the same law as a proof. Our Mishnah says that when the tailor sends a message and says, I'm done, take your shirt and bring money, then he goes from a shomer sachar to a shomer chinam. Wouldn't the same be true if he just said gemartiv? And therefore, it's the same law. He's not responsible for genev aveda when he says gemartiv, just like the borrower is not responsible for genev aveda once the period of the loan is up. So that's a good proof, right? Lo tol et shelcha shane. No, not necessarily. It could be when he says take your item. That's more a stronger statement. I don't want it. That's it. I'm not responsible anymore. Then he goes from shomer sachar to shomer chinam. But if he just said I finished it, then maybe it's not the same. So it's not a proof. Huna mor bar merimar kamed ravina rame matintin ahadade mishane. That was the second version, and now here's the third version of the discussion by Huna, the Mor, the son of Maremar, who said the following in front of Ravina. He brought two sources, two Mishnayot, and he showed that they contradict each other. And he also answered the contradiction. Tenan v'chulan shamru tolat shelcha v'ma'ot shomer chinam v'hu adin l'gmertiv. On the one hand, we have our Mishnah here in Baba Mesia, and then in this discussion where he says, the tailor says, take your item and bring money. He's called a shomer chinam. And that would be true also if you didn't say tolat shelcha, or if you said gemartiv. It's the same meaning, isn't it? Urmin, who the challenges from the later Mishnah, Amar lo shoel, shelach ushlacha umeta, hayav. If the shoel says, send it, and it dies on the way, the borrower is liable. And also on the way back, if it dies on the way, is liable. So why should that be? How come the tailor, when he's done with the item, then he's not liable anymore? He becomes a shomer chinam when he says gemartiv, and yet the borrower is liable, even though he's done with it, and he's sending it back. It says he is liable. What's the reason? Umishane amar Rav Rafram bar Papa amar Rav Chisda lo shenu ela shechzir betoch yimesh she'ilata aval lachar yimesh she'ilata patur. And so now Rav Chisda's statement is used as the answer to this contradiction, and he explains that Mishnah about the borrower, that he's liable on the way back, is only true if he sends it back early. He's still a borrower. But if it's done, then he's patur, because that would be the same as gemartiv. So it could be that Rav Chisda, we don't know the origin of what prompted him to say this. It could be that it was this very contradiction that prompted Rav Chisda to say this in the first place. I think we have an insight here into the way that discussions and sugyot were transmitted. It seems like a lot of times they remember that there's a discussion about this Mishnah compared to that Mishnah, and the statement of Rav Chisda. So you have the elements all there, and then you can just put them together. You can, once you have all the elements, you can figure out how to put them together. It's like the Mareh Mekomot that the Rebbe gives before the shiur. Here's the sources that I'm going to discuss. Once you have the sources all in front of you, if you're a good student, you should be able to figure out what are the relevant questions, what's a question, what's an answer, where is this going. But even with that, you can have a question answer, or proof, not a proof, or a challenge from two, and this is a resolution. And so you could take the same elements and put them in different orders, but basically with the same outcome. Next question. Patur mishoel v'chayav kishomer sachar, or dilma shomer sachar nami lahaveh. A question on Rav Chisda's ruling. When Rav Chisda said that once the term of the loan is finished and the borrower returns it, he's patur, meaning he's not a shomer sachar, and he's not a shoel anymore. A shoel is responsible even in ones. So he's no longer a shoel because he finished the term of the agreement. So he's not a borrower anymore. But he's still somewhat responsible. So how far down does it go? Is he not a shoel, but he is still liable like a shomer sachar? He still would have to pay for geneva v'aveda, even though not for ones. Or do we say that he's not even a shomer sachar, he's even less than that? So Memar says, I don't have a source for it, but it makes sense. It's reasonable that he's not a shoel anymore, but he is still going to be a shomer sachar, liable for geneva v'aveda, because he got benefit from this the donkey that he borrowed. So he should give benefit. He got that benefit. That's like payment for watching it, even on the way back when it's done. Tanya Kivateda Amemar, we have a braita that supports Amemar from the following interesting case. Halokech kelim mibet ha'oman l'shageran lebet hamiv. You have a guy who wants to send a gift to his father-in-law, and so he gets some vessels from an artisan who made them, and he's going to send them to his father-in-law. But he doesn't know if his father-in-law will like the gift or not. So he makes a deal with the shop owner. V'amar lo, im mekabelin otam himeni ani noten lecha demehen. Says, listen, shop owner, I'm going to send this to my father-in-law. If he likes it, the gift, and wants to keep it, then I will pay you. Ve'im lav, ani noten lecha lefi tobat hana'ah shebahen, v'ne'ensu b'halicha hayav, b'chazira patur, mipnei shehu kenoseh sachar. And he says, listen, but if they don't like the gift, my father-in-law's house, they say, what is this? It's junk. We don't want it. And they're going to return it. Then I'm not going to pay you the full value. Let's say the full value was $100, but I will still pay you the emotional benefit that I got from giving them a gift, right? It's the thought that counts. Well, it counts for something. How much is it worth? Let's say it's $10. So if they accept the gift, I'll pay you the full $100. If they return the gift, I'll still give you $10 because I still got benefit from them thinking that thinking that I got them a gift. I mean, I did get them the fact that I tried to give them a gift. Okay, that's the case. Now, what if something happens to the items and they break on the way there? The son-in-law is liable because he is a buyer or a borrower, right? He didn't have to pay for them, but he's a borrower in the meantime who's responsible for everything. He has to give back the money or give back the item that he has not yet paid for. However, if it's on the way back, the father-in-law already rejected it, and now it's on the way back. So the son-in-law is like, he's not going to pay for it anyway. He's only going to pay the $10. So on the way back, he is not liable because he becomes like a noseh sachar. On the way there, he's a borrower who's responsible in everything. On the way back, he's somewhat responsible, but if it's an accident that's out of his hands, ones, then he's like a noseh sachar who is patur be'ones. So we see the same thing here, just like when these vases that he got on the way back, he's downgraded from, he was borrowing them before, and now on the way back he doesn't need them anymore, so he's downgraded, but still he's somewhat responsible like noseh sachar. Therefore it'll be the same with the guy who borrowed a donkey, and now he finished with it. It's past the 7 days that of the term agreement, and now it's on the way back. He's not a borrower anymore, but he is still responsible like a noseh sachar. And now another story. A person sold a donkey to someone else, and the buyer said, listen, I'm not going to pay for it now, right? Just give me this donkey, and I'm going to bring it to that place over there. I'm going to try to sell it. Now, if I sell it successfully, then good. I'll come back and bring the money and I'll pay you. And if not, I'll simply return the donkey to you. So similar to the previous case with the gift, but now he's planning to sell it. So Azal vela izda bena. So he went to that place. He couldn't find a buyer, so now he's bringing it back. Ubade ka'ata itnis. On the way back, and anus, something happened, and the donkey was injured. Atalekamed Rav Nachman hayeve. So now who's responsible now on the way back? So the case came to Rav Nachman, and he said to the buyer, you have to pay. But itibe Rabba Rav Nachman nensu b'halicha chaya b'chazara patur mipnei shehu kenoseh sachar. Rabba challenges Rav Nachman from the Braita that we just saw regarding the son-in-law, because over there the ruling of the Braita is that if it's on the way there, then he's liable, but on the way back he's not liable because he goes from a borrower down to a noseh sachar, and this was honest, and so he is not liable. So shouldn't this be the same thing? He is that the guy that bought the donkey on the way there. I understand he's liable because he's planning on selling it. Hopefully he will, and then so he takes full responsibility as a borrower. He's in fact a buyer on the way there. On the way back, however, that's it. Now he should similarly be downgraded to a noseh sachar. And Rav Nachman has an answer. Marle chazara dehai halichahi maitama sebarahu b'chazirato ilu ashkach lezabuneh mila zabena. He said, in this case of the buyer of the donkey, his return path is the same as going there. What's the reason? It's simple logic. When he returns back, if he found a buyer on the way back, let's say he's going on the way back, he finds someone, says, oh, that's a nice donkey. So yeah, you want to buy it? Certainly he would sell it, right? So therefore, it doesn't really matter if he's going there or going back. He's looking for a buyer all the time. And therefore, he is considered a buyer/borrower the entire time and is fully responsible. That's different from the father-in-law case where he presented to his father-in-law, fallen and said, those are ugly vases, why'd you even pick them? And now he's taking them back to return. He's not going to give them to any other father-in-law or anybody else. He's only returning them. So that's why in that case, he goes from a shoel to a shomer sachar, but in this case, he remains the status of a shoel the entire time. Shemor li ve'eshmor lecha shomer sachar. Back to the Mishnah. I said, if we make a deal, I'll watch your lawnmower, you watch my hammer. So that they're both considered shomer sachar because I am getting benefit from you, you're getting benefit from me. So that's like payment for you watching my item the payment is my watching your item. And now we ask about that. Why should they be liable? After all, there is a halacha that is from this pasuk. If someone borrows something from someone else, and it breaks or dies, and the owner is not with it, then the borrower has to pay. However, im ba'alav imo lo yeshalem im sachir hu ba bischaro. If the owner is with the item, then the borrower does not have to pay. For example, if I borrow your plow and you also come along, I also hire you for the day, maybe to work the plow because it's yours. You know how to do it, how to use it well. So, and then the plow breaks. Even though normally as a borrower I would be responsible, but since I hired you also, then I'm not responsible. Now this is true not only if you, the owner of the plow, that you're working the plow, even if you're not working the plow, even if I hired you and you're just doing something else, even at a different place, doesn't matter. The fact that you're in my employment and I also borrowed something from you, the halacha is that now I am not responsible for damage to that thing. So that's what we apply here. Since you are working for me because you're watching my hammer, so now when I'm watching your lawnmower, if something happens to it, I should not be liable because that's shemirah ba'alim. Something happened to this item that I borrowed, even though you are, but you are employed for me at the same time. Therefore, I should not be responsible. I said borrowed or shomer, same thing. If I'm watching something for you and you're employed by me, I'm also patur. Amara papa damar le shemor li hayom veshmor lecha lemachar. The papa explains, Mishnah, you're right. If it was about the same day, so at the same time that I am hired to watch your item, you're also employed by me because I asked you to watch my item, and you're watching that for salary, the salary of my watching this item for you. So still, that's called being hired out. And therefore, if it was in fact on the same day, then I would not be liable if something happened. So the Papa explains that when would they be considered shomer sachar? When it's talking about different days. I'll watch your lawnmower today. You watch my hammer tomorrow. So today, if something happens to the lawnmower, I am responsible because you're not hired by me today. Rather, that will be tomorrow. So it has to be at the same time in order for there to be no liability. Tenor Banan, Shemor li v'shmor lecha hashileni v'ashir lecha. Shemor li v'ashir lecha hashileni v'shmor lecha kulan na'asu shomerei sachar ze lazeh ve'amai shemirah ba'alim hi. We ask the same question and we'll have the same answer for this longer version in the Braita. If someone says, "Watch this for me," and and you watch this, watch this thing for me, and I'll watch your item, or says, "Can I borrow this thing? Can I borrow this, and I will lend to you? I want to borrow your lawnmower. I'm going to lend you my hammer, or can you watch my lawnmower, and I'm also going to let you borrow my hammer." So I have both things. I'm giving both of them to you, but you are a shomer for one of them and a borrower for one of them, or the other way around. You have both items, and I say, "Can I borrow your hammer for free, and I will watch over your lawnmower?" In all these cases, this is considered a shomer sachar. Let's say, to pick the last case, for example, example, since I am borrowing your hammer, so now that is the payment that I'm getting. And so even though you're not paying me specifically to wash the lawnmower, since I'm getting benefit from borrowing the hammer, that's the payment for watching the lawnmower, and therefore I have the responsibility of a shomer sachar for the lawnmower. Okay, now we ask, why? That's Shemirah Ba'alim. In the first case, just like our Mishnah, it's the same case. If I'm watching something for you and you're watching something for me, so since you're watching something for me, you're in my employment. I'm watching something for you while you're in my employment, so I should not be responsible. Why are you telling me that in that case it would be a shomer sachar? And so we applied the same answer. Amar Papa, Amar Le, Shemor li hayom ve'shmor lecha machar. We're talking about a case where I'm watching your thing today, you're watching my thing tomorrow. So today, when I'm watching your item, you are not in my employment. Only tomorrow you will be. Another fun story about these ice plant dealers. This is an ice plant that has soda in it, and it would be used to make soap. So these are these soap dealers, and so there's a whole bunch of them, and every day they would take turns of who would bake for the rest of the group. You be the baker today, make us bread, make us lunch for the day. Now, so one day they told this guy, Joe, your turn today. Amar lehu nitru li gelimai. So he said, okay, I'll go do the baking. Would you do me a favor and hold on to my cloak for me? Safeguard it. Watch it for me. Adata pashu ba v'ignub. He came back. They were negligent and it got stolen. They weren't watching it and they put it somewhere not safe. And it was stolen. Atula kamed Rapapa chayveinhu. They came to Rapapa. Rapapa says, you're liable. He asked you to watch it. Okay, even the shomer chinam, but you were negligent, and so therefore you have to pay. But the rabbis told Rapapa, why should they be liable? After all, this guy, the baker guy, Joe, he was in their employment for that day because they asked him, hey, could you do the baking today? And so he's working for them, therefore they should not be liable. Rapapa was embarrassed because he didn't think of this law, he didn't think of this exemption. However, in the end, they figured out the exact time when it was stolen, and they found out that at that time, this guy who was supposed to be doing the baking, he was taking a break. He was drinking beer. He wasn't actually baking. And so since he was not working for them at the time that it was stolen, they were responsible to pay. So therefore, Rapapa was right all along. It's true, Rapapa didn't think of this application of this particular law in this case, but it turns out it was irrelevant anyway. However, this whole topic is going to come up later on in the Masechet, but there is a machloket about pishi'ah. It's one thing if it was not out of negligence, it was lost or stolen or honest, and the owner is there, then the watchman or the borrower would not be liable. But even a shomer chinam, if he is, or anyone who is negligent, just because the owner is there, he's not going to be liable, even though they were negligent. So the answer we just said makes sense according to the opinion that says pishi'ah. Be'alim patur. If you're negligent, then you don't have to pay. And those guys, the other friends, the other soap makers, were negligent, and therefore they would not have to pay if he was in fact baking at the time. So that story makes sense. That's why the papa was embarrassed, because if he really was baking, then they would be patur. That's why he was embarrassed. However, there's another opinion that says that even if someone is in your employment, so you're not liable if honest happens, but if it's negligence, then you still have to pay. So then why was he embarrassed? He should have said, well, these guys are shomer chinam, and they were negligent, and so they have to pay anyway, even though the baker was in their employment. Ela, hahu yoma lav didehi, v'amru le zil afe lan at. Rather, we have to interpret the story differently. that day was not Joe's turn to bake, but they told him, listen, can you do it anyway today, even though it's not your turn? And he said, fine, I'll do it, but I want payment. I want $5. But you know what? The $5, you keep it to safeguard my cloak. So I'll do it for the payment of you watching my cloak, which means that they were shomre sachar. Okay, adata igniv. Now he went, he baked, and by the time he came back, it was stolen. Atula kamed rapapa chaybinu. Now the papa says, oh, you have to pay, right? Because it was stolen under your watch. Amru le Rabbanan Rapapa Hashemi Rabba Be'alimhi. And now the rabbis ask him, oh, why should they have to pay? After all, the baker was in their employment, and in this case they were not negligent. They put it in a safe place, but they were all shomrei sachar, who are liable in genevav aveda, and therefore the papa ichsif, he was embarrassed. Says, oh, you're right, I should not have told them that they have to pay. Lesof iglai milta tahi shata shichra hava shate. In the end, they found out that the exact time when it was stolen, the Joe was not doing baking, he was drinking beer, and therefore he was not an employee of the soap makers, and therefore they were shomer sachat, and they were responsible for the geneva. And Rapapa was right all along, even though he didn't actually think of this caveat. Hanhu beteredahu kamasgu beorha. Yet another story, a lot of stories today. This is a good one. So these two guys that are walking together on the way. Chad arich v'chad gutza. One was tall, one was short. Sounds like the beginning of a joke. Arich arachib chamara v'avale sedina. The tall one was riding on a donkey, and he had a linen sheet that he was wearing or sitting on. Gusa mikase sarbela v'ka mesge bechad'eh. The short one was wearing a woolen cloak, and he was walking on foot. So then they got to a river, and the short one, he wanted to bathe in the river. So he's not going to wear his wool cloak in the water, that will, get all drenched. So he took his woolen cloak off, and he put it on the donkey, so you don't want to put it on the floor either. So he put it on the donkey. And he took the linen sheet that was on the donkey that belonged to the tall guy, and he wore it. He wanted to wear something, but linen, it doesn't soak up so much water like wool. So it goes into the water, and the water rushes and takes away the sheet. He loses the sheet, maybe because it was too big on him, so it didn't fit well. Anyway, now the sheet is gone. Now who's responsible? Well, the case came to Rava to adjudicate it, and Rava said, well, to the short guy, you have to pay, right? You borrowed this sheet, and now you lost it, so you have to pay. But the rabbis asked Rava the same question as before. But he was, the tall guy was in the employment of the short guy. How so? Well, the short guy, he put his cloak on the donkey of the tall one. So the tall one was a watchman on behalf of the short one. He was working for him. And therefore, since Ba'alav Imo, the short one should not have to pay. Ichsif. And Rava was embarrassed. He says, I didn't think of that. But it turns out at the end that actually he didn't borrow the sheet, and he didn't ask permission, hey, could you watch this? In fact, the opposite. He took the sheet without permission of the tall guy, so that's like actually stealing. So a thief is responsible no matter what. And he put his cloak there on the donkey without asking permission either, that, hey, can you watch it? And so he was a thief, and the tall guy was not in his employment. He never agreed to be a watchman for him. And so turns out Rava was right all along, even though he didn't realize this, he didn't take into account this particular detail, but nevertheless it was a correct ruling. Hahu gavra doga lechamra lechavre amar lechazi la tezol beurcha din harpekod deika maya zil beurcha deneresh deleka maya. So someone rented a donkey to someone else, and the owner of the donkey says, listen, don't go by the path of Nahar Pekod. Here's Nahar Pekod because there's water there. It's all swamped over there, and it's not good for the donkey. Won't do well there. Instead, you should go by the passage through Neresh over here, because there's no water over there. So the renter, of course, didn't listen. Azel Beruchad Nahar Pekod umit hamara. He goes to the Nahar Pekod way, and the donkey died. Ki ata amar in berchad nahar pekod azil umihu lekamaya. So he comes back, says, sorry, your donkey died. The owner says, well, what happened? Which way did you go? Did you go to the nahar pekod way? And the renter says, yes, I did go to the nahar pekod way, even though you told me not to, but there was no water there. In fact, when I went, there was no water. So it died from other factors. It would have died anyway. It's not because of the water. Amar le Rava, male leshaker, iba amar le ana berchad neresh azli. So Rava adjudicated the matter, and he said, we can apply amigo here. Why would the renter lie? If he was lying, he could have said a better lie and said, oh, I went through Neresh according to our agreement, and then he would have been off the hook, because it's honest. And so what could he do? And so since he said now that it's true, I went to Nahar Pekod, but there was no water, we should believe him also. Abaye, however, said, no, we do not apply the migov. Why would he lie? He could have had a different lie if there are witnesses. And in fact, they had witnesses that he went by the Nahar Pekod way. And so now he just admitted it, but he said, oh, there was no water. We don't believe him because we actually knew ourselves through witnesses that he went the way that he wasn't supposed to, and therefore he said, no, Abaye disagreed and said we should not apply the migo in that case. Shemor li v'amar lo hanach lefanai shomer chinam. The Mishnah had a case where someone says, can you wash this for me? And the other guy says, put it before me. So what does that mean, put it before me? So we understand that it means that, yes, I'm willing to be a shomer. He wasn't paid or anything, so he is a shomer chinam. By saying, put it in front of me, that means he's agreeing to be a shomer chinam. Amar Rav Huna, Amar lo hanach lefanecha, eno lo shomer chinam velo shomer sachar. Rav Huna contrasts the case with the Mishnah with the case where the other guy said, placed it in front of yourself. That means, no, I'm not watching it. You put it in front of yourself and you watch it yourself. And so therefore in that case, the one who was asked is not shomer chinam and not shomer sachar, is not anything at all. Ibaya lehu. Challenge. Hanach setama mai. A question, really. If he just said hanach, we understand if you said halach lefanai, put it in front of me, that means yes, I'll watch it. Halach nefanecha, put it in front of yourself, that means no, I'm not watching it. But what about just hanach? Put it down. What does that mean? Tashema. Shemor li v'amar lo hanach lefanai shomer chinam hasetama velo kelum. So let's see. We can derive it from the case that we saw in the Mishnah. If he says, someone asks, "Can you wash this for me?" and the other one says, "Put it down in front of me," then he's a shomer chinam. That means if he didn't say the word lefanai, then he would not be a shomer. So from our Mishnah, it sounds like the answer is no. Adrabah midamar Rav Huna hanach lefanecha hu deno lo shomer velo shomer sachar lo shomer chinam velo shomer sachar hasetama shomer chinam haveh. Ela mehalek al mishma mina. So we can learn the other way around from Rav Huna's statement, because he said that if the one who was asked says, put it down in front of yourself, then he's not a shomer at all. So we can infer from there that if he just said hanach without saying lefanecha, then he would be a shomer chinam. So you see that from the Mishnah and Rav Huna's statements, we have an excluded middle, and so we cannot tell from either one. It's just, we don't know. So let's see if we can figure out an answer. Let's propose that this very question is a machloket between two Tanaim. As it says in a Mishnah in Bava Kama, Im ichnis b'reshut Baal chaser chayav. Rabbi Omer becholam eno chayav ad shekabel alav Baal habayit lishmor. If I have an item and I put it into the courtyard of someone who owns the courtyard, and he gave me permission, b'reshut Baal habayit, can I put this in? He says yes, and I put it in, and something happens to it, the owner of the courtyard is responsible because he gave me permission to put it in, and that implies that yes, he also agreed to watch it. So you see that according to Tanakama, even though he didn't say anything, he didn't say, put it in front of me, he didn't say, I'm going to watch it. So he just agreed that I could put it there. So that is sufficient. So therefore, Hanach, that's like Hanach, and he is liable. Whereas Rabbi says, no, in all these cases, one is not liable until the owner of the courtyard accepts explicitly, yes, I will watch it. So according to Rabbi, if in a parallel case of someone in the marketplace, right, the above cases are in the middle of the street, when he just says Hanach, then that is he's not accepting to watch it. So let's propose that is the machloket is that this case of Hanach stam is a machloket Tanaim. According to Tanakama, saying Hanach makes one liable. According to the B, one has to be explicit about yet that he's going to watch it, and just saying Hanach is not liable. He's not a shomer. Mimai dilma ad kan lo kamri rabanan hatam ela bechaser de bat neturehi v'chi kamar le ayil di intarlach kamar le avalacha shuka lav bad naturehu anach v'tib netarlach kamar le. So this is no, maybe not. We're going to argue both ways. Maybe Rabbanan only said that he is liable in that case when it is a courtyard, because a courtyard it automatically safeguards something. It's easy to safeguard something in a courtyard, right? Just like, hey, put it in there, and then it's already safeguarded by being fenced in. And therefore, when the owner of the courtyard says, bring it up, right? Put it in. He gives him permission to put it in. So he means for sure, put it in and I'll watch it because it's so simple to watch it. Put it in there and then it'll be in my gate and then I will watch it. So in the case of a courtyard, that's where Rabbanan say, just by allowing it to enter into the courtyard, that's implicitly giving permission. However, in that case that we were asking about, which was in the middle of a marketplace, which is not a place that automatically safeguards something, there will be a lot more work to safeguard something in the middle of the street. So when he says, Anach, put it down, what he meant is, put it down and you watch it yourself. If he says, put it down in front of me, fine, that means he's going to watch it. But just Anach, put it down by itself, he would not say that. Even Rabbanan, who agree in a courtyard that one is liable if he says bring it in the courtyard. If he says put it down in the street, then he is not watching it, and so it's not a machloket Tanaim. We could also argue the other way around. Inameh ad kanaka amar Rabbi hatam ela b'chasero de la ayule reshuta ka ba'el mishkal mineh. No, we could also argue the other way around, that Rabbi only said that one is not liable when it comes to something that's in one's courtyard, because the person who owns the item has to ask permission just to put it in the courtyard. Even without the responsibility of watching it, he can't just put it in someone else's courtyard. There's trespassing. And therefore, when he gives him permission to put it in, what he says, so the guy says, can I put this in the courtyard? The owner says, yes. What he meant is, you can put it in the courtyard and you watch it. I'm not taking responsibility. You can put it in my courtyard so it'll be easier for you to watch, but I'm only giving you permission to trespass. I'm not taking responsibility to watch it. So there's a two-step process. He only did one step. But in our case that we were asking about, which was in the marketplace, Hanach ve'ana ka'amar tisakadatech Hanach ve'tibuntar ka'amar ilo otba reshuta ba'el mishkal mineh. But in our case, when the guy says Hanach, put it down, he obviously means put it down and I will watch it. Because if you think it means put it down and you watch it yourself, so if it's just to put it down, does the guy need permission to put something down in the middle of the marketplace? Yeah, I know I could put it down, right? You only need permission to put it down in the person's field. There, when he said, yes, you could put it in my field, he needs permission to that, so therefore it does not apply that he is also going to watch it. In the marketplace where he does not need permission to put it down, if the other guy says, put it down, he means put it down and I will watch it. and therefore the two opinions in this Mishnah can both be on this side or on that side of the question that we asked about Hanach, so we don't get an answer to that question if you just say Hanach, is he responsible or not. Baruch Adonai De'olam, Amen ve'amen.